Okay, now expanding on that, the thing I want to bring up, now we have had, if we as the Michiana Shooting News did a video about the mayor in South Bend. Now, we also, like a lot of people, saw the recent debate, this is probably some months ago, the PBS debate with our local radio host, the new chief of police in South Bend. Okay, and did you see that debate?
I did not, but I heard about it.
Okay,
I did
now,
not see it.
what I see is, I see a sheriff that sits in front of me who swears his oath to obey the law and uphold the Constitution. When I go to South Bend, I see a mayor who flies his position, and because we also have an audio recording of him taking some points of view, which we've not released yet, okay, that he blatantly violates the Indiana Constitution, blatantly violates his oath, because he's also a Naval Reserve officer, I discovered. Therefore, he's also violating his oath as a Naval Reserve officer. We have major issues with that. And the South Bend police chief, now, I know he's from the East Coast. I know they have a very different political point of view than we do here. But regardless of your political point of view, isn't the oath and the Constitution the supreme thing if you personally are, say, anti-gun? Shouldn't you as a law enforcement officer, for the jurisdiction you are presiding over, aren't you supposed to sit that aside and say, I'm here to enforce the laws of the jurisdiction I represent? Isn't that how it should work?
Well, it should, and there is a way to change that.
Okay.
It's called We the People. It's, there is mechanisms in place when we get people in place that do not abide by their oath of office, that do not follow the Constitution. And I wouldn't say enforce all the laws, because quite frankly, I would be against that. I'm not for that concept to enforce all the laws of the land. It depends. There's a lot of people that said, as sheriff, I am obligated to enforce all the laws of this land. I disagree. And I have discretion. My officers have discretion. And that discretion hinges not only on common sense, but also the Constitution. What is it? What part of, we've all heard this, what part of infringed don't you understand? And so it's the type of thing that we would never think of. I've had media sitting in this very seat, and I've said, if somebody would say to you, you cannot publish this, it's against the law, what would you say? And the media representative said, I'd probably publish it. Exactly, because you've just judged for yourself that it's unconstitutional, and that's what they're lambasting me for making a decision to maybe not enforce a future gun law that would be anti-gun. So it's those kind of things that, when you have a representative of government, there's ways to hold them accountable. There's pressure that can be put on the mayor as well as the appointee of the mayor. But again, who does that appointee answer to? It's to the mayor. Okay, now you got to go back to the mayor who is elected and hold him accountable. I'll tell you, the sheriff, people have a direct line to me, and they can come to me, they can call me, they can email me, and I'm accountable to them. Now that doesn't mean the majority rules, because that's not the way a republic works. The republic is a rule of law, and just because a majority of people want to punch you in the nose doesn't make it a right thing. It's you're protected by rule of law, and so that goes back to the Constitution. So I'm just glad I don't live in South Bend.
That's good enough. You want to run with that a little bit?
Actually, that's a good segue to the next question.
Okay.
What is your opinion of the Florida Sheriff Nicholas Finch, who was in turn arrested for letting someone go that wasn't actually breaking any local and federal laws by transporting a handgun? He was then arrested and charged with, I think it was obstructing justice, or what was the charge?
It's a felony charge. There's obstruction, there's siphoning, there's some other things involved in it.
Did you hear about?
I have heard about it, and it does concern me. I dare say that I don't know how Florida law reads. I have no idea who can arrest the sheriff. Typically, it's the coroner, which seems rather ludicrous at times. But in Indiana state law, that's who it is. And I must say that the information I have on this is somewhat limited. Because I'm not sure all the facts have come out on this. But anytime a governor allegedly arrests the sheriff, I have great concerns about that as to what overstepping, what power usurpation is occurring there. As of course a sheriff of Elkhart County, I'm not so sure that I can have any bearing on that, except for maybe in some verbal support or whatever. But the issue is certainly a crisis for Liberty County, Florida, and what, ironically, the name of their county is Liberty. They have a crisis on their hands. Even if it's legitimate, it's a crisis. So I don't know that I can rule on that. I would say that it's one of those things that it's a red flag for me, and I can tell you that if the state police, on behalf of the governor, came to my office to arrest me, book me into my old jail, that would be a problem here, and there would be some interesting outcomes of that.
Okay. Well, let me change that around a little bit to help expand on that, where we're going with that question. In Florida, from what we understand, and there again, we're talking a lot of allegations here to be on the record. The gentleman was stopped. He had a handgun without a handgun license in Florida, which apparently is a crime of some level. The sheriff of that county felt that since the man was not a criminal, the firearm was legally possessed, okay, he shouldn't have been charged with basically something that violates the Constitution. This sheriff sounds just like you. He says, the Constitution is the law of the land. This man is not a criminal. He did not have an illegal firearm, therefore he should not face any kind of criminal charges. And we know he was arrested, and the legal outcome will be yet to be determined. So let's take that here to Elkhart County. A citizen is pulled over by your deputies. He is not a criminal. He has no criminal record. He's not involved in a criminal activity, but he has a handgun without a handgun license in the state of Indiana. What's your response to that as sheriff?
Well, I've already let people go in that scenario. I mean, let them. I never wouldn't arrest them because of they were causing any trouble. Believe that they had a right to have a handgun. In Indiana, we do have a handgun carry license that purportedly vets people so that we keep it out of the hands of convicted felons. And typically we have probably one denial a week that we give out for people who've had prior histories or violent histories and things like that. In Indiana, the view I take here is to possess a handgun, you need to have the handgun license. I'm talking about carrying it, not your home or business, but just carrying out and about. And that's the state law. It's not a federal law. It's a state law. But the issue is, as the sheriff office, and you've probably experienced in this office in application processes and so on, that we shall issue that unless they show that it's an improper person. In other words, it's a felon or whatever. I don't have any problem keeping permits out of the hands of felons, but we all know that doesn't keep guns out of hands of felons. Correct. So it's to me, I would rather us at the legislative level say, do away with handgun permits. Everybody can carry a gun unless you're a convicted felon. And again, convicted felons, if they're caught with a gun, they can be charged with it. But we all know that that law is not going to keep it out of convicted felons' hands. Okay, so the problem is the handgun permits are a revenue stream for the state and sometimes for the county. So it's one of those things that it probably won't be very politically expedient to get rid of handgun licenses. But I'd say that Indiana has one of the most conservative license laws, in that we have a lifetime license, and I encourage people to get the whole, unless you're 95 years old, I'd say get the lifetime license, and we issue those for the most part without question. Again, only if they have a history of violence, maybe alcohol or drug abuse, and that's, that's a judgment call, but it has to be pretty bad before we're going to say no. So I say all that in that we have officers that have arrested people for possessing a handgun without a permit. I would say that's rare, but that happens from time to time. Was that sheriff correct in Florida in releasing someone based on that sheriff's perspective? It sounds to me like he was within his right to do that, okay. And I'm good with that. I don't know what Florida law says, and what at what point does in their state a sheriff have that ability. Here, do I have the ability to refuse an arrestee based on it's either the charge or they need a medical assistance or what? Absolutely, I'm the sheriff. I'm the one that's running the jail, and it's my understanding that even though there was allegations of records destroyed in Florida and so on, he was never booked, which would have never created a record. So I don't know. I can't say definitively what the details are down there and make a judgment call, but it's certainly a red flag. It's certainly a concern for me.
Okay. So you would endorse what's been generically called Vermont style carry. You would be, as a personal opinion, you would be okay with that? You
mean to have no permit?
Yes, like they do in the state of Vermont. You are.
I wasn't familiar with Vermont, but yeah, and I think Texas is that way. I think Arizona is that way. Where, in other words, carry it concealed, open. I think that really the Second Amendment and our Indiana's Article 1, Section 32 gives us the right to be armed, not only to protect ourselves, but to protect the state, and I think that's where we should go with it. I'm as a sheriff, I'm not necessarily ready to die on that hill to say, I'm just not going to enforce all that. My people know that the issue of gun permits and the people's right to carry a firearm. It's a tool that we currently use, especially for bad guys and guys in suspicious circumstances, at 2 a.m. in an industrial complex, and they have burglar tools and they have a gun. So I mean, it's things typically like that we run into those kind of scenarios. It's not your typical speeding ticket and a gun in the glove box by happenstance, and that's typically not how this scenario plays out. So that's that's my view on that.
Okay, that's fine.